How's everyone doing? Good to see some familiar faces. I'm actually not going to be doing a whole lot of talking, but as you all know, the Global Health Informatics team has been growing a significant amount of work, and our team is going to present a lot of the activities that we've been up to over the past year or so. And so without further ado, I'm going to start by introducing you all to Michael Tucker, one of the new members of our team.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. We're going to be going over our program as a whole, but I was told I need to say that we have no financial conflicts, Michelle, so no one presenting today has any financial conflicts. So we are Global Health Informatics. We are a subset of CDMI, and we have three goals today: to introduce, to learn, and to show how you can get involved. So we want to provide an introduction to global health informatics and the unique challenges faced in the global health context. And we also want you to get to know RI's Global Health Informatics team and our projects, and then most importantly, learn how you guys can get involved. So what is global health? So here's a delightful quote about what global health is. It is not just defined as a place outside of our own country. The United States is very much a part of global health. It actually represents health across the globe. What sets global health apart is a focus on raising the level of health for underserved populations and the focus of health equity. Global Health Informatics focuses on the tools and technologies that supports rising the tide for everyone. So, what is some context that makes global health unique? All contexts have disasters. In recent years, the United States has experienced floods, fires, storms, and other emergencies. Developing and underserved populations may be particularly vulnerable to disasters of this kind and pandemics due to the challenges with infrastructure. Internationally, other countries have additional factors such as lack of availability for electricity, internet, transportation, and literacy, and they all play a key part in how we shape our technology approaches. So I want to give a real world example with Malawi. It's one of our partner countries, and we've worked with them a lot in the past. So Malawi has a population of about 19 million people, and 97% of that population lives under the poverty line of $5.50 US per day. 75% of that population is highly vulnerable to natural disasters because they're very agrarian. 75% of the population lives in a rural setting and lives on a level of subsistence farming. And 1/3 of their entire food production every year is lost to natural disaster, whether that be drought or flood that happens annually on a cycle. And speaking of the annual cycle, the World Bank has estimated that an annual of 1% of their GDP will be lost every single year, and it's only going to increase as climate change is expected to increase the frequency, intensity, and impact of these extreme weather events that happens in the country. And to give a little bit of health context, the medical doctors per 10,000, Malawi is at 1.2 doctors per 10,000, comparatively to the US and Canada, which are in the 20s. And they're even below their neighbors, which are around 2.3, 2.4. So what do we do about it? It starts with a mission and vision. Our mission is to achieve health equity for resource-constrained communities through health information technologies. And our vision is a world where health information technology directly contributes to the sustained elimination of global health disparities. So that is what we do. So who are we? We're the Global Health Informatics team. These are the people behind the work. We have a wide range of backgrounds and that come from a variety of different organizations. Of course, some from Regenstrief and IU, but we also have partners with nonprofits like Global Connect for our OCL work, or OpenMRS Inc. And thanks to Tara Cullen, we even have ties to Pittman County, Arizona. Even though we come from different organizations, we see ourselves as GHI just as much as our employing organizations. This is in part due to our strong culture and flat leadership structure where every person on the org ladder is seen as a leader with no limits being put on them just because of their title and their role. And we're able to work in this environment because it starts with our culture, and our culture starts with our core values. And personally to me, I think the one that makes us stand out the most is our commitment to creating sustainable solutions where we aim to build ourselves into obsolescence. But that's the exciting thing about global health. We're in a target-rich environment. So we might go into one country, fix as many issues as we can. They no longer need us. They'll never need us again. But then we can find and assist another country. And so we've put those principles to work with some examples of our past work, such as Indian Health Services Information Technology Modernization Project. We've done e-health strategies with Liberia and Malawi, some data use partnerships in Ethiopia, but one of our biggest success stories is OpenMRS, and Paul is going to say a few words about kind of what OpenMRS is and what they've done in the past. You want to just, yeah.
I'm actually standing in for Burke. He's out sick today. But if I could channel Burke, what I would say is that since 2004, a lot has happened with the OpenMRS project, and we're still very actively involved, probably more than we ever have been. And if you fast forward to today, OpenMRS, by most philanthropies in most countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, consider OpenMRS a standard now. And the number of clinical settings that OpenMRS has implemented in is measured in the tens of thousands. And so what's unique about OpenMRS is it's really not about anything other than building the tools and the processes to empower local communities to build their own record keeping systems. And so maybe just to give a concrete example, the Ministry of Health of Nigeria has standardized its outpatient clinic settings on OpenMRS. And so they've got this large infrastructure where Nigerians are implementing it in over 2,500 settings. And so the work that's involved in getting countries to a place where they can do that on their own in a sustainable way has really been the goal of OpenMRS. And the Regenstrief team, in particular, J.J. Dick, Burke Amlung, and some other members of the team like myself, our job is to really build out that whole infrastructure, that whole community infrastructure, which is everything from, good software products, good learning milieus where countries can build the capacity to learn how to do this effectively, and a lot of interactions with ministries of health and with various philanthropies to help build the business models that can enable that kind of sustainable growth. And so, the Institute and its team members on the GHI team play a pretty significant role in it. Now, a lot of times people mistakenly make the assumption that because OpenMRS has a not-for-profit organization that Regenstrief isn't involved, but the reality is quite the opposite. We're actually deeply involved. The not-for-profit organization just maintains this very large community activity that has grown way beyond what this organization could sustainably support. So anyways, that's what I'll say about that.
Thank you very much, Paul. So that was our past work, and then coming into the work that we're currently doing. So our work comes in three main flavors, which is community building, capacity building, and implementation. We specialize in community building with kind of one of our main projects, but again, they fall into three main categories. And so we're able to do our work because we are partnered with multiple funding organizations. And these organizations do not cover all areas of our work, but they are a good reflection of the variety and width of the organizations that we are funded by. And we're able to have such broad work categories due to the wide net that we cast that affords us amazing opportunities to work with teams all around the world and create a level of sustainability with our core projects. We have several projects that come and go throughout the years, and you saw some of those previously, but we do have one mainstay, and that is our project that we're going to focus on today. That is our Digital Square project that covers about 80% of our time and funds OpenHIE, OCL, and the DUC. As you can see, our Digital Square project actually falls within that golden circle. And so our golden circle is the nexus point of our three main areas. And so OpenHIE, DUC, and the OCL team, these initiatives are mainly supported by Digital Square, but our engagement with the WHO terminology services over here as well as upcoming global fund will help bolster our resources with these initiatives. And one of these might stand out a little bit, which is our community building. It might be a little bit nebulous, not terribly clear. So Jennifer's going to say a few words on what community building is, and then she's going to roll into what our Open HIE project is.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is how we start most of our community meetings, by saying that, because in most cases we are working in 3 areas of the globe: the Americas, the Europe and Africa, and the Southeast Asian region. So, in this conversation with us, in this presentation and in conversations with us, you'll most likely hear us using the word community. We probably say it 100 or 1,000 times a day. I don't know. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about, like, what do we mean by that word community? Because this might be a little bit different than the work that many of you do. I would say that one of our superpowers in GHI is community building. And so we're going to share just a little bit about that. And I think our aspect, or our thoughts about community building, are really represented by this proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so this is kind of the essence of what we think about when we think about community building. So I'm Jennifer Shivers, and is standing in for Jamie Thomas, who is one of our leads in the practice of community building. Jamie's unfortunately out today with a sick child. And so I'm going to share with you just a little bit about our philosophy, and then one of our projects, Open HIE. So communities of practice it's really a formal discipline, and it's really about collective learning and peer support. So a lot of the work that we do in global health is what I would call, we act as a convener, or an organization that brings people together. And so I think one of the key things that we do is try to find the threads of connectivity across the globe, across regions, maybe even in countries that are next door to each other and don't necessarily know each other, and try to make those connections and provide a space for that connection. And so that's what we try to do with community of practice. So next, I'm going to talk about Open HIE, which is one of those communities of practice. Open HIE is not actually, some people think by the name that it's a software that you can download, and that's not true. It stands for Open Health Information Exchange, and I'll explain what it is a little bit in the next few slides. But I would just like to point out, we're a very friendly community, as our nickname is pronounced OHI. Everyone's welcome to engage, and please join us. Okay, so as we think about why do we have this OHI, or Open HIE community, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the origin. And it feels a little bit funny for me talking about this, since Paul and Jamie and some of the other team members were actually there for this. But in 2009, there was a need noticed in Rwanda, and that need was to be able to share health information in a context where maybe there's community service that's being given, maybe a pregnant woman is getting help at a clinic and then later needs to deliver at a hospital, but there weren't connections in how that information was able to be shared. So a group of organizations, including Regenstrief, came together and really worked on what is an architected approach, and how could we actually solve this challenge in a resource-constrained environment. And so then in 2012, we'll see these same organizations coming together with PEPFAR to really work on what is that architected approach. And I think there was recognition along that journey that this approach could be applied in other areas as well. And so you'll see kind of this timeline here, where then in 2013, Open HIE was officially launched, and we've grown since then. this picture really shows, this is from before the pandemic when we were having in-person meetings. So this is a meeting that happened in Ethiopia. And this is a meeting where we had 227 attendees from 70 different organizations and 20 different countries. So I say that to kind of give you an idea of the scope of what do we mean when we say community and who do we mean when we say community. And so you'll see that really Open HIE is designed with that focus on health equity and making sure that we are focused on country-driven projects and supporting countries as they try to scale their health information solutions. So I mentioned this, I think I used the word secretariat or convener. And so what does a secretariat or convener do? So these are the main things that we as a team do. One is we build consensus. So you'll see out there in the field that there are many approaches to health information exchange. And we try to bring those together, provide documentation, and then have a process to update that documentation so that it's a continual learning process of building consensus around practices as well as standards. We also have an focus on building partnerships. And what this means is that there are organizations that you may have heard of, like IHE, a testing and standards organization that creates profiles. We would have partnerships with those types of organizations, but also with organizations like the Elizabeth Glacier Foundation, which is based in Malawi or working heavily in Malawi and other countries. We'd have partnerships with them to bring them into the fold as we work on how do these practices and building consensus, how does that all fit together, and what is the way that these countries could approach health information exchange. We've also done a lot of work. Paul and Jamie have done a lot of work to put together a steering committee that empowers the ministries of health in the 3 regions that we work in to provide input and direction for Open HIE. And then I'll just highlight one other thing on here. That's the Open HIE Implementer Network. This is a forum where people who are doing projects, those could be ministries of health or implementers on the ground, where they can come and share their experiences with implementations, share their challenges, get feedback, and or network with others. And so those are some of the key things that we do, is create that space for these interactions to happen across the globe. So I mentioned documentation, and you're probably thinking in your mind, what do I mean by documentation? I'm sure some of you have seen this picture, which is the health information exchange architecture that we support. We work to build consensus on how does this evolve over time. So you'll see on this diagram that there's health and financing mentioned, and that was not originally in there, but as countries are maturing, their needs for health information exchange have grown. And so we take those and make sure that they get put back into the diagram and the documentation. And I think really the reason that we put this network of people behind this slide is to note that it's not us, the Regenstrief team, creating this. It's actually the whole community coming together on what are the practices that we recommend based on the field work. So some of the other documentation that we have is architecture specification. This is built on top of IHE profiles and or FHIR implementation guides, and really talks about how those architecture components can share information in the standard way. We also have a getting started guide, which helps countries with how you could get started with health information exchange. Talks about things like governance and practices that are important as you try to solve some of these problems. We note in that guide that lots of times there's a conversation about technology, but implementing health information exchange is more than a technology problem. And so we address that in some of the documentation that we create. So just a little bit about like, okay, what's the impact of open HIE? That's one thing that we're working to articulate in a more clear way. But on our website, you will see that we have impact stories, and I just pulled quickly from one of them. So one of Ethiopia's challenges was that they have 21,000 health facilities, and in order to understand how do you approach something like the pandemic that we've had in the last few years, you need to know where your health facilities are located and what are the capabilities of those facilities. And so they were able in the past few years to work on a health facility registry, which is an electronic tool that helps them understand where their health facilities are located. It can be used for planning, but planning, where do we need to build new ones? What part of our population is not supported? But these types of tools can also be used then to support challenges like COVID. So if you want to read more about that, I put a link there and the QR code there that you can access. But we have other stories from other countries, but we're working on a better profile of understanding which countries have actually implemented open HIE and or point to that architecture pattern in their strategies. So I hope you guys stay tuned and we can share more about that in the coming years. Okay, so work in progress. So I just mentioned the first bullet, which is better visibility of open HIE's impact. We've been asked by community members to have a way for them to see what the projects are that everyone is working on related to either components and or data exchange. We are also working on local capacity. So what does that mean? How can we help people who haven't had opportunities to participate in health data exchange projects? How can we help them get more practical experience as well as build their foundational knowledge of things like what is a client registry or what is an MPI? So we're creating foundational materials that start to explain those concepts that are important at all levels to understand how you start to address health information exchange. So I mentioned the Open HIE Academy. This is new. We've had it for about a little over, I think, almost 2 years. And so we're starting out with content. As you can see, we're linking to content that's out there, like LOINC. We're also trying to help provide base education on fire, and then some of those health information exchange topics that are important for everyone to understand as they try to move forward in their strategy. So if you would like to know more about Open HIE or participate, you can join our community forum and or mailing list or participate in our WhatsApp group. These are open to anyone to participate, and we'd love to see you engage. And I think next is a little bit more about one of our data use projects. Yes, question, Titus.
So if I understand correctly, technology tools are what really is scope of the HIE. So who make recommendations to practice for like how do you get to the area?
Yeah, so just so everyone hears the question was about are technology tools included and how do you get to that technology layer? And that's a great question. One of the things we're trying to do is address that with a tool suite that we have called Instant Open HIE. This tool is in the developing phase and uses containerized and packaging approaches to help be able to install the different components that you would need. We also have a list of technologies, and we're working on a way to, I don't want to use the word evaluate, but assess alignment with the Open HIE standard so that we can give some type of, I don't know if we want to say stamp of approval, but some type of notes about how compliant each tool is with the Open HIE architecture. So those are some things that we're working on. But I think this is one of the big challenge areas that we have for 2023. I don't know, Paul, if you want to say anything else.
I guess to add to it, a number of countries are actively implementing different portions of the state, either using bespoke development or off-the-shelf open source projects for commercial groups. And they're having relative success or non-success with that. And as a standard setting organization, we practice, we welcome everyone to that. But as Jennifer points out, ultimately where the rubber hits the road, you have to start having opinions about the extent to which given technology meets basic functional requirements, whether it meets the specifications that are forever evolving. So we're building kind of like a neutral ground where the organizations that are building technologies contribute to the standard, and vice versa, we're influencing the standard through this review process. So I answer your question.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Pittman, and I work as a project manager. Most of my time is focused on this data use community. This is a bit newer of a community than OpenHIE, which Jennifer just spoke about. It was formed almost 3 years ago now, and it is an open community of organizations and individuals who are passionate about health and healthcare data sharing. So I'm going to assume that sounds like a lot of people here today. But this community was initiated by PEPFAR, and with Regenstrief and our team, the GHI team, working as the secretariat to form and support this new community. So in a similar work to what Jennifer described as the secretariat for OpenHIE. So what exactly is this data use community, and why does it exist? Well, we know that there are a lot of people in places like PEPFAR supported countries that are in the process of leveraging data to support the health of others. They're collecting it, they're using it, and there's some really cool and innovative things that are being done to create efficiencies with data and information systems. But one observation that was had, that in the midst of all of the great work that people are doing, they're also usually working in silos. And there wasn't really a forum for people who are doing and funding to connect with one another. So this community is bridging those silos and addressing 3 key needs, which you can see up here. One is that organizations and individuals can share their in-country perspectives, and we can really understand what the real needs and challenges are that are being faced by the different countries and regions. That they can share what's working or what's not working, and we can hopefully harvest from those experiences shared some emerging best practices. And lastly, donor alignment, which I think is pretty unique to this community. So if we think about the world in which those who are trying to support health systems improvement, they are often having to make spending decisions based around what we know is proven to work. But oftentimes in the communities that we work with, and on the other extreme, they're just people who are in the field who are trying to innovate based upon circumstances where there really is no evidence base. So from the data use community perspective, one really important value is to bring these parties together. So those on the field, those funding, Ministry of Health, all the different players into one forum. So as you can imagine, data use is a pretty big topic. So where did we get started? We selected an initial focus on enhancing continuity of treatment and interruption in treatment, specifically for HIV patients. As many countries supported by PEPFAR approach epidemic control, some of those remaining last mile obstacles can only be addressed using longitudinal patient level data. So we started looking at what data or digital interventions are being used to support HIV treatment continuity. So our team specifically started researching and doing a lot of outreach and thread pulling, like Jennifer said, to learn about the different challenges and approaches that are taking place A lot of our calls are primarily with teams in Africa. And we continue to have new calls often. Just recently, we actually spoke with a team on the Ministry of Health in Lesotho, and they shared some of their challenges that they're facing right now, particularly around geography and cross-border challenges with HIV continuity patient or treatment. So interesting to keep making these connections and kind of growing who we're connecting with. And so we invite people to come to monthly community meetings and share their work in progress and experiences and challenges. So for example, we had a team from Nigeria share how they send SMS reminders to their patients, something that can seem pretty normal and standard for us here in Indiana, but as I think Michael mentioned earlier on, can be a little bit more challenging for those in resource-constrained communities. We also had a team from South Africa share how they're using AI to predict whether a patient will miss their next appointment. So as you can kind of get a flavor for what's being shared around the different points of care for these patients, you can see that each country is really facing their own unique challenges. And these different presentations that our community members are giving gives each other a chance to learn what's working and those successes, but also learn from each other's scar tissue as well. So what did this year look like? We had 13 different community meetings where we helped facilitate, host, and organize those. Our last one took place actually yesterday morning. And we have around, I think it's a little bit more now after yesterday, but 42 different countries represented as coming to these meetings and participating in the data use community, and over 800 different health data use professionals on our mailing list and just in regular communication with us. So with our last meeting yesterday, we are thinking ahead to next year and the future. So where are we going? And I would say we're not only going to continue to invite countries to share around HIV treatment continuity, but we are also documenting those interventions and those lessons learned. We've created what's called the Technology Intervention Framework. So this is a Git book for everyone to access. So we'll continue to get updates from those who have shared, but also make sure that we are growing our representation and growing the different interventions that are adding to that technology intervention framework. And Burke Mamlin on our team is really leading the efforts around this work stream. But we also heard from different community members throughout the year that a big priority that a lot of countries are facing is around patient identity management. So Burke and Jennifer actually led a workshop earlier this year in March where we invited, I think it was around 7 different country teams as well as different subject matter experts to come get together for an hour-long workshop and learn about what are the challenges people are facing, what are they working on, what are the different priorities. And it was from that workshop that the community members suggested it would be really helpful to have more regular meetings specifically around this topic so that they continue to share, continue to learn, and then also build out a resource to help people and teams wherever they are on their identity management journey. So we have been meeting monthly. We actually had a pretty cool meeting maybe a month or 2 ago, where teams would share how they're using biometrics to support their identity management initiatives, and got a nice email afterwards from someone saying, hey, I wish I had this meeting like years ago or months ago before we had started this work. So it was pretty cool to hear some of the impact and influence and help that these meetings are having. And all of this is recorded, and hopefully this resource will start being developed called the Identity Management Toolkit, is what we've got named so far. And Sean Granis is lending his expertise here and leading this work stream. And then just recently, we actually had a community member from Ethiopia reach out to us. and requesting a session on metrics and reporting, really specifically looking at processes and data flows for countries to maximize data for health strategy and planning. So in early February, Jennifer will be leading another workshop to host around this topic, another exploratory workshop. And we'll continue to invite different country teams as well as subject matter experts and kind of see where this one goes and where our community can be of most help for these countries. So as you can tell, we do a lot of community meetings. We are working with a lot of different subject matter experts, country teams. We would love anyone who is interested to get involved. I've linked in here our website, datausecommunity.org. There's also a QR code you can scan for our mailing list. We'll send updates on different events that are coming up, summaries. And if you have any questions or ever would like to get involved in any way, shape, or form, feel free to reach out to me directly. I put my email up there as well. So if there are no questions, I will hand it over to Joe to wrap us up with OCL.
Okay, well, took longer than anticipated, but it works. So when I first read the title of this community, I thought, well, maybe this is going to be like Odyssey, where you pool large collections of data, and it's not. But do you have any plans to do something like Odyssey in your OpenMRS user community? As a question for the visionary here.
It's funny, Titus, that you bring that up. In fact, there's a real active movement afoot to engage the Global South in the Odyssey community. And I literally had a conversation yesterday about like what the process would be to automate a transform from OpenMRS to Odyssey. So there's a guy named Andy Cantor who worked at IMO. He's recently retired and he's gonna lead that effort, serving as a technical bridge. So yes, there is.
All right, with no other questions for the data use community, I'm gonna introduce myself. Hi, my name is Joe Amlung, and here at the Regenstrief Institute, I am a business analyst, but in the context of Open Concept Lab and in the broader global community, I am a product owner for the OCL product. This is a digital global good for terminology collaboration. And I think I might start us off by showing the OpenHIE architecture diagram, because OCL serves as a terminology service, which is one of the components in this diagram, and you can see that here in the middle row. Terminology service is that central source for standards and definitions. And I'm sure many of you have come into contact with ICD-10, with our LOINC team, with SNOMED, with all these different terminologies that themselves need managed, but they also need a little bit of help sometimes to get used in a local concept at the point of care. And that's the goal of a terminology service, is to use these standards and definitions to normalize clinical data and essentially get everybody speaking the same language so that we can eventually get to the point that we are semantically interoperable and we reach semantic interoperability. Open Concept Lab is a product that specifically is working towards that goal. The goal of this software is to collaboratively manage, publish, and use definitions and terminologies, and then to use those in the real time, getting electronic access so that you can integrate them into your health information system. And I've got a few key points on the right that I like to point out. That Open Concept Lab is open source and has been recognized as a digital global good. It is cloud-based in the sense that not only is this software available on a GitHub repository, but it is also available hosted online so people can just go ahead and get started, try it out, and collaborate with the community. And additionally, this is very community-driven. Apart from working in the OpenHIE space, we also are working in our own community and with other communities to make sure that we are meeting the use cases of people who really need this terminology assistance. This product is standards based in that it's working to comply with FHIR and with the IHE profile called Sharing Value Sets and Concept Maps. And it is very focused on low and middle income countries. Hence why we're implemented by some of these partners that I've listed here with PEPFAR, with World Health Organization, and with OpenMRS. So I do think it helps to give a little bit of background as to what are the drivers in the ecosystem around us that make this terminology service kind of stand out from some of these other products. I'm sure some of you have worked with Apollon's DTS product, which is another terminology service, but these ecosystem drivers are what set OCL apart. So first, there's smart guidance and these emerging standards from partners such as World Health Organization and from PEPFAR, who are they are publishing their guidance, and that comes with terminologies. And a terminology service would help to adopt these terminologies for local use. This second point is building terminology capacity and easing the deployment of terminology. Terminologies are very useful, but there is some local adaptation and repackaging that is needed, and people need a useful and intuitive way to do that. Additionally, terminologies are becoming a bit more open license, less restricted as far as their use and their publication. OpenMRS, as we mentioned before, is also doing a lot of work with OCL for dictionary management. And then countries are also using a terminology service to implement their national health data dictionaries as they invest into their health information exchange and thus start climbing the levels of a terminology management maturity model. So just an example of some of the work that we've been doing in the past year to start to break down the barriers of terminology use in the real world. Year of the User is an initiative that we've taken to open up the world of terminology and terminology management to our implementers on the ground. This year in particular, we've really embraced user experience and design by bringing in a user experience team member as part of the development process. We've been doing a lot more user feedback and co-creation with our users. We have developed user personas to better understand and talk about who is using a terminology service and who we are developing for. And then we've also got some specific design initiatives. And an example of this is in the bottom left piece of this screen, where we've got an organization overview to provide a home for terminologies, even if they don't necessarily need to set up a full website and their own terminology service. So just some highlights over the past year in our Year of the User. We have worked hard to become FHIR compliant and build FHIR support natively into OCL so that people who are already started with FHIR can also get started with the terminology service pretty quickly. We are also working very closely with World Health Organizations and their Smart Guidelines initiative by giving their terminologies a place to live and giving implementers a way to use those. This feeds into our preparation for smart dictionaries, where when someone needs to build up a concept dictionary, whether it's from the ground up or from something that they already have started, helping them to build that concept dictionary and start to get towards standardization is something that we're doing. We are also working with our partners like CDC and OpenMRS, particularly in their HIV reference implementation called ORI. And we are getting ourselves bundled up with OpenMRS version 3 to be the concept dictionary management software for that. In addition, we're doing a lot of community growth. This is a lot of what we do is bring together community events and do showcases and learn from our users and engage with the OpenHIE community so that we can make sure we're building this product in a way that actually meets the needs of the users who are going to put this into their information architecture. So just to give a bit about what's coming up in the world of OCL, as I mentioned with OpenMRS, we are getting much, much closer to their dictionary management. And so we are working with their implementers to make sure that they can set up their standards aligned concept dictionaries and then manage them in the long run and not just when they first set it up. We're also, as I mentioned, working very closely with WHO Smart Guidelines and giving that home for implementers to start locally adapting and using WHO's computable guidelines. We are also closely working with the Kenya government as just an example, as they are implementing their national health data dictionary. This is an example of a lot of the work that we're doing with countries as they are establishing the shared reference that their local implementations can point to and get closer towards interoperability and speaking the same language. Finally, one of the examples I wanted to give was PEPFAR's monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, essentially their metrics work, providing that technical assistance so that PEPFAR can have strengthened terminology governance. So the OCL community is very open for people who would like to join in many different capacities. We've got a few upcoming meetings just as examples that happen on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to contribute code, we've got communities for that. If you'd like to share challenges and experiences, we've got a community for that. If you would like to actually start bringing terminology into an EHR, particularly OpenMRS, we've got an OpenMRS squad specifically for dictionary management. We also have a mailing list that you're welcome to sign up for and hear about updates that are going on or hear about opportunities to contribute your expertise. And if you'd like to just start using the app itself, then we've got that app ready to go. And that's linked there. It's a little hard to see, but the only thing I wanted to say about the OCL community here is that we are partnering with many of the other terminology experts or people who want to start using terminology more often. And as an example, we've got, of course, Loink and Apollon as real giants in terms of their terminology management expertise, along with our other partners that I have pictured here too. And that's it. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Michael.
Does anyone have any questions for Joe? He took off before asking that. No. All right. So the final thing that we wanted to ask is, how can I participate, or how can you participate? So the number one thing you can do to get your foot in the door is to sign up for projects in our community mailing lists. You saw that in the presentation as we went. We're going to be sharing this presentation with everyone so they'll be able to find those links. And another thing that would really help is, do you have an expertise that would benefit our community? So that can be data quality and cleaning, identity management, terminology management and use, fire IG creation, implementation and use. We're always looking for new experts to join the fold, and that new expertise is great for our community calls, but is also amazing for our OpenHIE Academy. So if you have an expertise that would plug in well with the world of OpenHIE or even global health, we would love to have you and collaborate with you to create a course on our academy. And we encourage everyone to check out the academy, see some of the courses, maybe learn about OpenHIE architecture and learn a little bit more hands-on with what we do. And with that, does anyone have any final questions for us about GHI or any of our projects? No? All right, thank you so much for your time.